Josh Hoover is not getting the respect he deserves this offseason.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. We are brought to you today by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show. We'll also discuss TCU baseball taking a series from Cincinnati. Lost on Sunday, but won the games on Friday and Saturday to take 2 out of 3 from the Bearcats. TCU men's tennis, once again, in the elite. We'll get into that later on in the show. But we start today with our friend Josh Hoover, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, and the assembled media, the prognosticators, they don't see it. And let me be honest with you guys, okay? I am not someone that typically gets super caught up or super invested or emotional in preseason lists. My general thought about them is, well, if my team's not featured, if TCU's not featured, or certain players not featured, it will take care of itself as the year unfolds. Right? So people that don't think Josh Hoover is the dude right now, if Josh goes out and balls like we think he's going to, then they'll see it soon enough. But I have been confused as I have looked around, and one of the more popular kind of preseason power ranking things is, hey, let's rank all these Big 12 quarterbacks, right? Let's get them in here, see where they fall. And you know what? I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt to a certain extent. Oftentimes, number one on this list is Sam Leavitt. And I really can't argue with that too much. Sam's coming off a great season. Yes, he had Cam Scadaboo and a really good offensive line with him, but they're once again going to have a good running back and a good offensive line. He went to the playoff. He won a Big 12 championship. He wasn't just a bus driver in doing that. I get it. But some of the other people on this list, Jake Retzlaff, who I talked about on Friday when I was talking about BYU. Okay, I understand. Winner, all the intangibles, made big plays last season. Got it. You put him over Josh because Josh doesn't have those types of victories in his resume yet. But then some of the other players that are ahead of him on these lists that keep popping up, like Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson, okay, he had a good season last year. He ran for over 600 yards, threw for 2,700 yards. But Kansas State as a team did not live up to expectations last year. They honestly had a pretty similar season to TCU. They weren't a great team. They were a good team. They figured some things out as the year went on. They closed the season strong. But they let Will Howard walk, and Will went on to win a national title with Ohio State in favor of starting Avery Johnson and beginning that era of football. And there's still time for that to pay off for them in the long term. And I'm not saying he was bad last year. But K-State was a team that was up there in preseason polls and in the standings when we talk about projecting who the winners are going to be. He didn't light the world on fire. Sawyer Robertson, I get it. 28 touchdowns in basically 9 games. Threw for over 3,000 yards. But Sawyer Robertson is a slightly better version of Josh Hoover going into last year, meaning he's a dude that took over in the middle of the season due to an injury. He did some really nice things. Now, Sawyer won more games than Josh did in the second half of that year that he took over for Chandler Morris. But they lost in the Texas Bowl to LSU. Like, the only reason they're putting Sawyer above Josh Hoover is because Baylor took down TCU by a field goal on their home field. Is that it? Rocco Becht. Josh Hoover last season threw for 3,949 yards, 27 touchdowns, 11 picks. The only two things that you can really use against him are he threw interceptions, which he did. We talked about it. We had long discussions during last season about how he needs to protect the football better. But if you look at his game log, had 2 picks against Houston, 2 picks against Texas Tech, 2 picks against KU and SMU. That's 8 of the 11 right there. But towards the end of the year, had a 2-game stretch against Baylor and Oklahoma State where he didn't turn the ball over. Threw 1 against Arizona, threw 1 against Cincinnati, and finished the year with 1 against Louisiana. But he started protecting the football better. He got the season turned around. And he's coming into this year with some questions around his offense because he lost a number of wide receivers. And I've been on the record saying, look, one area where I do have a little bit of concern about TCU, I like the talent they have at wide receiver, but it's tough to articulate just how good that room was last year with Jack Besh and Savion Williams and JP Richardson. That was an elite unit. That wasn't just a good receiver room. We're talking about like one of the best in the nation. Okay? So there's a lot to live up to there. They've retooled this offensive line. I think it's going to be better when the dust settles. Maybe not at first, but over the course of the season, it will be. He didn't have a run game to lean on last year, and I think that contributed to the turnovers to a certain extent. A lot of you were jumping ship after that Tech game. I got emails. I got messages on Twitter. I got comments here on YouTube. Why are you still rolling with this guy? He's a turnover machine. He's not doing his job well enough. Well, I'm not going to totally excuse him from those bad decisions, but I think a lot of it was the defense was struggling. They couldn't run the ball. And so when they got behind in ball games, you saw a player who was trying to force the issue, who was trying to score 3 touchdowns on one play, who felt the pressure of, I have to put a good drive together. We have to go get points, because if we don't, by the time we get the ball back, maybe we're down 21. And that led to some risky decisions that didn't pay off for him. But as they played better complementary football and worked out some things on offense and the defense improved, it got better. There's also this, and this really is more TCU focused than the big picture of where is he going to be on these lists. Because again, should he be higher in my mind in the preseason? Yes. But these things are going to work themselves out. He has an opportunity to go play at a high level, and if he does that, people are going to notice. And if TCU wins games and wins big games, people are going to notice, and he'll get the recognition he deserves eventually. Here's the exciting thing for TCU fans, though. For the first time since the 2020 COVID season, you have a quarterback coming back. There is no question who it is. There's no competition happening here. And he got to go through spring practice. Let me explain. The COVID 2020 year, Max Duggan had some health issues, but when fully healthy at 100%, he was the guy. But that being said, he missed some time during the spring, during the fall. Not his fault. They found a heart condition they had to take care of. Thank goodness they did. And he ended up being okay. But when he was healthy, he was the dude. 2021, same type of thing. Max was the guy, but once the season started, there was, some immediate controversy because they were struggling, and Chandler Morris was sort of in the shadows there. 2022, Chandler Morris and Max Duggan battling it out. Chandler wins the job. He ends up going down. The rest is history. Max takes over, almost wins the Heisman Trophy. But there was a quarterback battle. The next season, we can talk about semantics on if there was actually a quarterback battle, but not everybody was sold on Chandler Morris. There were a lot of you that chimed in here and other places and said, look, you got to go get a quarterback in the portal. You got to have some competition here. Have somebody who can push this dude, or at least have somebody who's a competent backup. In the event that he gets hurt, they can step in and play. TCU actually had that dude on the roster. We just didn't know it yet. His name was Josh Hoover. And in the archive somewhere, you might find some shows where you say, you can't go into the season with Josh Hoover as your backup quarterback. I was wrong. But it spoke to the lack of depth in that quarterback room. Point being, there was still some question about who it was going to be, who the QB was going to be. Last year, I think the coaching staff had a very clear vision of what they wanted to do. They made Josh Hoover their guy. But as a fan base, we were wondering, who's it going to be? Right? And it ends up being Josh Hoover. But he missed spring practice because of an injury. Before that, you go back further in TCU history. Max Duggan and Alex Delton battling it out for a starting job. Max Duggan and like Matthew Downing at one point. Max Duggan and Chandler Morris. But this season, you have a very good combination working for you. No question. Josh Hoover is your guy. He got to work with this team during the spring. You had the luxury of building a roster over the past few months, or I should say adding to a roster, because they seem to think they have things figured out. It's just about, we need some depth here. Maybe we need a little more juice or an upgrade here. But these are not wholesale changes, okay? But you have a vision in mind of what your team's going to look like. Your quarterback has been with this offensive coordinator now for a few seasons. He should know this playbook backwards and forwards. He should know the 5 to 10 plays that like are the bread and butter of this TCU offense, or should be, or going to be. He should know on 3rd and 3, what do I want to run? Not that it's getting called every time, but if I have input here, what am I going to do? He knows the protections. He knows the calls, okay? He's got the reps. That is a unique situation, and it's a positive situation for TCU. And it's one that they can build on. So he's not getting the recognition he deserves right now. Okay, that's fine. Again, these things will work themselves out. But the good news is TCU is poised to be a team with a really good quarterback and is poised to be a team that can make a run. And Josh Hoover is going to be at the center of that. When we come back, TCU baseball improving their hosting chances over the weekend. We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Okay, I told you about them at the beginning of the show, and we talk about Monarch Money because we're passionate about it here. There are a few things more important in your life than managing your finances, making sure you're paying your bills, making sure you're not throwing money away. One of the things I love about Monarch Money, it helps me manage my spending. I have a bad habit. My wife, she talks to me about this, right? I go get lunch so often when I'm at work. I'm lazy. I don't meal prep on the weekends. It's crazy in my house because I got 4 kids. We're running around. I'm just like, okay, it's easy enough. I'll just grab something on my lunch break. Well, food is more expensive than it's ever been. You're spending $13, $14 a day. That adds up. Monarch Money helps show me I got to rein that in. I'm just throwing money away each month on eating out. Maybe there's recurring subscriptions that you didn't know about or that you forgot about. Monarch Money can help point out that to you as well. It gives you great insight. It's an all-in-one convenience app. Maybe you have spending under control, but you think, what about investing? What about building my wealth, setting up my kids or setting up my family, setting up myself for a brighter future, setting up myself for getting to retire at a decent age where I can still do some things and feel good about it. It's an all-in-one wealth management center Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com to get 50% off for your first year. I'm not a math major, but I know that's half off. Half off of your first year, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege. Give it a try today. Well, the Bats finally woke up for TCU back at Lupton Stadium as they take 2 out of 3 from the Cincinnati Bearcats, won 17-11 on Friday night. Followed that up with a 7-6 win on Saturday. Anthony Silva, walk-off home run in the 9th inning. And then on Sunday, thought they might get another walk-off, but lost 9-8 in a game that turned into a bullpen battle, and TCU just could not hold on, which is kind of surprising because Cincinnati's bullpen is not good, and that was the reason they lost games 1 and 2. So let's talk about the positives first. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, incredible, just still hitting the cover off the ball. The offense as a whole, I like what I'm seeing from Colton Griffin, who's been in the lineup more lately. Carson Bowen's hitting the ball well. There was a lot of depth in that lineup this week. They worked walks, they grinded out at bats, they had big hits, they came up with huge hits in different situations, and it was good to see. Luis Rodriguez came in on a Friday night and did a good job. Helped kind of take control of that game back. Frogs lead got cut down to 8-10 in the 8th inning. They respond with 7 runs in the bottom of the 8th. Noah Traeger goes yard. Anthony Silva hit a home run. Cole Kramer had a couple RBIs. They did what they need to do to get a victory on Friday. Saturday, they come back. They get behind. They battle back. Anthony Silva walk-off home run. On Sunday, had a 4-1 lead. Immediately give up 4 runs. That game gets tied. Cincinnati takes the lead. TCU would come back and tie it. Cincinnati would take the lead again. TCU would come back and tie it. We're down 9-8 going into the 9th. Jack Bell had a single with 1 out, but the lineup turned over and they just couldn't capitalize. Carson Bowen popped out. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder hit a fly ball to right field, and that was the ball game. But overall, really good weekend from this offense. Did some great things. Now, Cincinnati's pitching depth is questionable. And I said it earlier, their bullpen is not good. But still, this is a team that hasn't exactly lit the world on fire, even against bad pitching this year. So seeing those strides was a welcome sight. Now the concerning news. Rough weekend from a pitching standpoint. And Tommy Laporte against Arizona last Friday, he struggled. Didn't have his usual command. Well, that continued in this game against Cincinnati. 4 1/3, 7 hits, 5 runs, 2 walks. Did have 11 strikeouts. Gave up 3 runs in the first inning. Then kind of settled in a little bit, and you thought, okay, maybe he can give you 5 or 6 tonight, but gave up a couple runs in the 5th and ends up getting pulled. Now, as I said earlier, Luis Rodriguez came in and did a nice job. KDD and Zach James closed the game out. But Tommy Laporte has been so consistent. And the problem is this team just doesn't have much room for error. Like Caden Parker came in Saturday, didn't even get out of the second inning. Just could not find the strike zone, gave up some hits. He gets chased. Braden Sloan came in and did a nice job, which was good to see. But this team is still in a place where they've got one starter they can count on. And that's just not a huge recipe for success in the postseason and regional, especially when you're not a team that can just go out there and rake. Now, Cincinnati's got a good lineup. I mean, that's obvious. And Mason Brassfield went today, and he wasn't bad. 4 1/3, 4 runs. Not amazing, but also like you can sort of expect that from your third starter. Like he's the dude that's trying to help you close out a series, eat up some innings, take some pressure off your bullpen. But whether it's Caden Parker stepping up or one of these young guys making a quick leap, somebody has to emerge as a second option as a starter because you can't put everything on Tommy Lepore each and every weekend. They play Utah Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Utah baseball's having a rough year, but they are coming off taking 2 out of 3 from Arizona this weekend on the road. If you sweep that Utah series, which is a tall task, but if you do it on the road and you win a couple games in the Big 12 tournament, I think they will have a very solid case for hosting a regional. Now, it's not set in stone, and I don't really know how the committee is going to view a team like West Virginia. I mean, I'll give the Ears a lot of respect. Like, they lost a series to K-State this weekend, but they haven't had an inexcusable series loss. I mean, they've taken care of their business. The schedule's been manageable, but they've done what they needed to do to stay right there at the top of the league. Their strength of schedule is a big question, though. You know, Arizona really hurt their hosting chances by losing to Utah. So TCU suddenly has a little bit of opportunity here if they can take care of business to work their way back in as a hosting school. When we come back, TCU tennis moving on again. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. David Roditi and his squad, they just continue to impress and be the most consistent program on campus. Over the weekend, take down UCF 4-zip. And that tennis match, they take the doubles point, and then they win 3 singles matches to skunk the Knights. So they now move on to the Elite Eight or the quarterfinals. They'll play Virginia, who's the number 4 overall team. That's going to be Friday at 4 p.m. in Waco. If you want to head down there and check out some tennis this weekend. TCU trying to defend that national title that they won last season. And it's just amazing to me. I mean, we'll see what happens here in the quarters. They were in serious danger against OU last weekend. And for a minute, it was like, man, are they going to get upset here in the round of 32? That would be super disappointing. But they found a way to pull that off. They just, wiped the floor with UCF. Now you get to the big names, here in men's tennis as we close in on a potential national championship situation. They lost to Wake Forest in the indoor national title in the fall. We'll see how they handle the outdoor nationals tournament as it begins on Friday afternoon. But congratulations to David Roditi and his team. They just continue to show mental toughness, show physical toughness, and find a way. I mean, on the ropes against Oklahoma, they pull that off, and then they have a great response against a UCF team that took them down in the Big 12 tournament. I talked on Friday about the most important game on TCU schedule. I finished off my series, the top 5 games on the Frog schedule. And I said BYU is number 1. Slow on YouTube says, I would think TCU's most important game of the year would be played in Texas. Well, I mean, I had Baylor at number 2, and I get it. You can make the argument for that Baylor game. I don't really think you can make the argument for the Houston game. But yeah, you love those natural rivalries. You love games against in-state schools. I just think BYU is a great example of the areas where TCU struggled last year, BYU excelled in. And so this will be a really good test. And okay, how improved are you actually? How much better are you? How much did you learn from last season and its disappointing moments? And how are you translating that to playing football this upcoming year? And then a lot of BYU fans found that video, which is awesome. Thanks to Coug fans. One of them says, a BYU fan, I'm excited. This is going to be a brawl. Yeah, it should be a fun game. And I mean, it's been a long time since TCU's been in Provo. I guess I could have looked that up before I started talking on the podcast, but going back to the Mountain West days, that was something that would happen. And it's just a great environment there. Like, they pack it out. They're loud. They're rowdy. So that's another cool part of it, because I think TCU handled that well when they went and played Utah last year. But that Utah team was struggling. And so I don't think you really got the full Salt Lake City experience in that ball game, because that was a program that was kind of on the ropes and having trouble. And so the fans weren't completely into it. I imagine it's going to be a game, hopefully with high stakes and with a crowd that's going to be ready to rock and roll. We'll be back tomorrow and the rest of the week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel.